You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Lowe's knows how to help make your home holiday ready for less. Get Select Style Selections vinyl flooring for just $1.99 per square foot and have it installed before the festivities begin. Our team can help you every step of the way. See a Lowe's Red Vest associate or visit Lowes.com/holiday install to get started. Lowe's, we help, you save. Basic install only. Date restrictions apply. Subject to availability. Installed by independent contractors. See associate for details. Contiguous U.S. only.
Today I've got a new episode about papermaking for you. This is a translation of the previous episode in Polish, where Karolina Nowacek from our Oplotki, Stowarzyszenie Oplotki, made an interview with Olga Krause-Matelska. So let's dive deep into this interview. Well, Olga represents the foundation called Fundacja Nasze Podwórko. She lives in Gościejów near Rogoźno in Poland, and her husband and her run a foundation there. This foundation, among others, is engaged in recreating paper-making traditions and telling stories about them. Of course, they are running workshops in order to show how it was made in the olden days. When Karolina asked her where did this interest in paper came from, well, it came from another place, as she said. It came from Czerwonak. She used to work in Czerwonak. That's a place really near to Poznań, like a small town near Poznań. She worked in Czerwonak Community Center for several years, and during one of the historical projects, she found an interesting trail, the paper traditions of that place. It turned out that this tradition is unique, that is rare craftsmanship, not badly described in the literature, and the digging in literature has begun for her. From the first article that she read, thanks to her friend Karolina Nowacek, she became so interested in that she started reading, looking for literature even deeper, and she was looking for literature from various fields, from mechanics through source studies, because determining the age of paper is one of the auxiliary sciences of history. So she kept reading about it and tried to recreate this tradition from Czerwonak during workshops. She was interested in that craft and history because a good few workshop themes for children where you can create something and talk about history at the same time was interesting for her. She says that those workshops also attract men and adults in general, which is not so common for handmade. She has enriched her workshops with various devices. She has made special tables, special frames, screens, press, and she has made a calendar and various accessories for her workshops. All this in very interesting, and along the way, she has also noticed the ecological aspect of this common of hers and her husband's undertaking. Paper used to be traditionally made from plant fibers in the Middle Ages and from rags that were processed and shredded in special devices, usually powered by water or wind energy. And at their workshops, they sometimes try to grind some plants, but they mainly process waste paper. Making paper from the waste paper, she started to perceive such a completely different ecological aspect of this craft and of those workshops as well. Altogether with her husband, they often combine their classes with the history of ecology. Also, one of the aspects of this hobby is to dig into history and recreate the old technologies, but the other is talking about ecology and about the fact that it is possible and even necessary to process not only paper but also other materials. They are just focusing on paper and showing what can be made of ground paper. When asked if she could describe the stages of paper-making process to us, the listeners, how to make that paper, she just told the whole story. Well, the historical process started with having to obtain a lot of straw or rags and to process them, macerate them, or to put it simply, let them rot. Then you had to grind them, mill them, which was done with the help of a machine powered usually in Europe by a water wheel. And the Polish name for the machine is stępa. And it's a European contribution to a tradition that dates back to ancient China. After the grinding, you have a pulp, which you can form paper. You need to dissolve it back in the water, and then you can form paper with this water suspension using a sieve. The sieve has its specific shape. It can be adjusted to the sheet, that is, it can create the size of the sheet, and then it has to be drained from water. That is what happens under the press. We also know that there can be used a bookbinding press for it, and then one has to dry it, and then the paper is basically ready. Traditionally, the paper was then sized with animal glue, and it was usually a woman's job. It used to be sized with glue polished with a special stone for it to be smooth and good for writing. And then it was divided into reams. The paper went then into the regular use. Today, we don't use rags. During those workshops, they don't use those rags or plant fibers in paper production. Unless they are making experiments with some plants, they grind them and toss them to the vat. They have their own sieves, frames, and special fold-out table with the vat that allows them to take it along to different places where the workshops are held. They just draw the pulp from the suspension from the vat, then drain it on clothes, then put it under the press. Sometimes they just smooth it in the colander, which is a series of hard pressure rolls. And then they take it just take it out, and then they show those steps in the crucial process of paper making. Basically, at the end, they just dry the paper on a dryer, and when it's dry and it's ready to be used, then it's also presented during the workshop what can be also done with it to make it even smoother. There also can be a gelatin or animal glue applied on it to make it even smoother after drying. But that's not necessary in order to just show how the paper itself is made. Karolina admitted during this interview that she saw some, fragments of ground plants in the paper, and she asked the Olga to tell a story. What is it all about? Where those plants came from? And Olga admitted that's because they make paper from all sorts of things. And for example, the green marble-like one is most probably made from grass, straight from the mower. They simply grind it together with waste paper, and from such a pulp they they make the paper using a sieve, in a way just described before. The sheets made from that are quite hard and effective. One can see plants in some papers because paper can be decorated with plants. One can throw them directly into a vat of water and catch them with a sieve. The effect is more random, and you can also put them on the paper before pressing, and they usually combine very nicely with this paper mass. It is a matter of composition. You can make bicolor papers using a decal. It's something that pretends to be the watermark but isn't one. Such a two-color paper is the paper with a heart. There are two layers. One had a hole in the shape and a heart, and they in a way like fold two layers together. So papers may have different textures depending on the material on which they put them into the press. Whether it will be a jute or thickly woven linen, the pattern will be pressed on the paper. It looks very decorative, but is not always a good thing, especially if you want to write on the paper, because it's coarse, porous, and it's hard to write on it. Olga admitted she tried writing on it through, and it's possible with a ballpoint pen, but it's not that easy. Fountain pen won't do because the paper is similar to tissue paper. You can make scented paper, for example, from ground mint. The smell of ground herbs lingers for a really long time. These are the kinds of
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
There's nothing more satisfying than finding the perfect green paint for your living room. Except maybe popping open that can of Valspar Ultra and rolling that first smooth stroke on the wall. And there's nothing more satisfying than admiring your freshly painted wall.
Ooh.
Except maybe peeling off the painter's tape to see those crisp edges. But the most satisfying part of all? Valspar Ultra's price tag, starting at $29.98 a gallon. Affordable, durable, available at Lowe's. Price varies by sheen.
Experiments they do quite rarely because it's quite difficult to grind herbs at home. Blenders go blunt very quickly. That's how she broke a few blenders, as she admitted. That's why she collects old blenders. A side part of their activity is collecting old blenders like those from the 70s because they have very good parameters. Paper can also be produced successfully at home. Of course, it is time-consuming and laborious, and undoubtedly it may be not so much dirty, but it gets awfully splashy and messy in the kitchen. But there is also a lot of fun with children. Children like to do it very much, although the older they get, the more reluctant they get to get their hands wet. Okay, so when asked if there's interest in paper making, if, people still want to learn how to do it, Olga admitted that it seems to her that, yes, they are observing that it's just like during, some festivals. it might not be a very big event, but where they show how to make the paper, there is a great interest. They arouse a small crowd of children and their parents who just come to see and don't necessarily participate, but ask a lot of questions and ask about this technology and how it's done, and they are quite curious about it. For her, she says, it's a practical form of teaching history. Children and adults are happy to listen to stories while making paper. Talking about this tradition of paper making around Poznań, she is also talking about, Renaissance Poznań, about the tradition of craftsmanship, printing, and all of those stories that come together with it. When asked about technical things, like, how long does it take from the moment, you share the paper into pieces to the moment that you have a ready-made, paper in your hands, Olga said it can be done in one day, although for sure it's better to soak the paper. Then it is easier to grind it. If she has time, she leaves it in the water for a longer time, or sometimes she boils it even. However, she doesn't use any additives because the paper she uses already has additives in it. So most of all, it is already bleached because most of it is, white paper. And it is paper for printers usually that she gets, as a waste paper. So it's usually printed with ink. So it has everything in it. So there is no need to add something special to it. The more colorful newspapers, the more different the colors that turn out at the end process of paper making. The newspaper is great from, best newspapers, as she said, is Gazeta Wyborcza or Polityka or Głos Wielkopolski, but they always get gray paper from it because there is a lot of ink in it. And how about this, paper made from colored newspapers, the chalky ones, will that be suitable? And Olga said it's much worse. She thinks it would have to be boiled, and it's better not to do it because it's full of chemicals. And that's why she doesn't use this, colored newspaper, glossy magazines, as we call them. Sometimes she adds paper towels. She has done various experiments. For example, she has bought pure cellulose, but she thinks just lack of the knowledge. And then she used the cellulose as an additive because they didn't succeed with making the, paper just with it. How about making this paper at home? Maybe you wonder what could be used instead of this special press at home to press the sheet of a paper, handmade paper. Well, Olga admitted that using a rolling pin is not a good idea because it loosens the paper. It will stretch the fibers. And she thinks it's better to put it in between two pieces of cloth because it works just like a press with heavy books, for example. The paper will also dry without pressing, only it takes a little longer. However, when we use a calendar, it's like a mangle for rolling, but at a later stage when it's already drained, right? So we put paper in between two pieces of cloth, and you have to do it quite skillfully because it often tears apart. Such mangling additionally smoothens and drains the paper, but there is not a big difference between it and the one that is drained with the press. So yes, you basically can make a handmade paper at home. And, when asked, does Olga recommend playing with handmade paper? She says she highly recommends it. She thinks it's a really interesting way of spending free time. Besides, when you make your own paper, you get a lot of ideas on how to decorate it. You can, for example, color it when it's still a pulp, Or you can dye it with pigments to the water, like add some pigments to the water. For example, food dyes are safe for children. You can paint directly on the paper when it's still wet with watercolor, and you can soak the dry paper and make some color transitions. You can throw in, for example, a tissue paper that will also color the paper itself. The best ideas come to mind when you're making the paper, just babbling in that water. You never know if the adults won't get enthusiastic about making their own paper for decorating or ornamenting, inspired by playing with children. Well, Olga said this can happen because in her case, something that was a result of a duty at work turned into a passion that she infected her husband with. And now he is the one who mainly deals with papermaking and milling. Such playing with a child is a form of creative development. It starts with grinding the paper and checking what will result be, and ends with decorating and making your own stationery. And if you have ground paper pulp and add some glue, you can go into spatial forms, like create paper sculpture, make masks, utility items. The pulp is very durable. It was a surprise to Olga that the armors of the Chinese army were made of paper. The army then had archers and crossbows, and with great strength they pierced normal metal shields from metal sheets, and it turned out that the paper has such a density and such layers that the paper shield and armor protected against shots. You can read about it. Paper is indeed a hard and durable material. Sometimes she does such experiments with paper. 2 years ago she left the rest of the paper pulp in a mold outside, and she was curious what would happen. It looks like something natural, like a cork hub, or it hasn't changed much, but it just dried out and it's very durable. She tried to crush it and she failed. She was even during a workshop in Poznań, and an engineer came because he wanted to see how the paper behaves, in intending to use it to build hulls for boats. In Museum of Paper Industry, she saw different ideas for paper. She didn't think it was used in so many different areas. This historical technology, which was created 2,000 years ago, can still throw its new faces, and workshops somehow can talk about it. Maybe these workshops will encourage one of these young people to look at paper in a new way, as a renewable material you can make from a forest that is planted and then hopefully exploited and reproduced wisely. She strongly emphasizes this ecological aspect. During the workshops she makes, she creates so-called tytki, which are, bags that can be used instead of plastic bags. And every child or adult after her workshops knows how to assemble a newspaper bag so as not to run to the store and buy another plastic bag. Well, with this ecological accent, I think it's best place to end this story. I hope I got you really, invited into this story of paper. And I gladly welcome you on our blog, where the story will continue and you can see some more pictures about those workshops. Give us some time. We are still working on those articles, but you will surely can get to know some more of this story by Olga. I hope I see you in the next episode.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.